Welcome to Fade the PB8, a channel that's dedicated to alcohol markers and doing step-by-step drawings that you can follow along with. In this video, we'll be doing a tutorial on how to blend alcohol markers. So what I've done so far is I have selected two palettes here. One I have filled out myself. This is what we're going to be doing together with these colors up here. And then once I'm done with that, we're going to take these pinkish colors and we're going to color in this object right here. So let's get going. I'll just explain everything as I go along. So when I do this, I want to start with the lightest color. And the reason why you want to start with the light color is for a few reasons. Number one, you can always go darker. So if you're going to make a mistake, you can make a mistake with a light color, and it's really not that big of a deal. Number two is we're getting the paper wet. So basically when you're blending markers, you're essentially mixing the ink together on the paper itself. So the more damp and the more wet the paper is, the easier it is to blend. So what I've done here is I grabbed my first marker and I've come up to, I like to go 2 colors up from where it is in order to fade it. So I came up to about the 3rd mark. Then what I do is, if you see I wrote right here, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. This is essentially saying start with the lightest, then go with the second lightest, back to the lightest, go to your third lightest, second lightest, back to the lightest, and you just kind of keep working your way up like that. So we incrementally get to the darker colors. All right, coming in with my second color, whenever I add a new marker, with the exception of the lightest marker, I want to start in the darkest part of the drawing, and I want to work my way to the lighter spot. So I'm going to start all the way to the right here. And I'm not going to go over where the 5 is too much. I'm not going to go too much ink. I'm just going to get a little bit there. We'll just get a little bit damp. And then I'm going to come down to about halfway through number 2. That's good. All right, so we just did 1, then we did 2, then we're going to come back to 1, and we're going to blend this together. There's a little bit of a line. Now, the jump from 1 to 2 is pretty tame. It's not a big jump, so it doesn't require a lot of ink on the paper to blend. However, the jump from 2 to 3 is pretty big, so it's easier if the paper is a little bit more wet. So I'm going to come back in with the second color and just do just a little bit more. Okay, let's go to the third color now. So we're adding a darker color, come to the darkest spot, and the reason why you want to add to the darkest spot is that, like, chances are you're going to go back over it with a darker color. So it's kind of like a good testing ground where you can kind of experiment with a different color on your paper itself without really taking much of a risk. So add it to the darkest area, work your way to the light. So there's 3, come in with 2, blend this out. I might have to do 2 passes with this just because the step from 2 to 3 is so big. That's okay. Let's come back to 1. So we went from 3 to 2 to 1. And I'm going to go with the 1 marker. I'm going to go all the way up. I'm just going to use this as my blender. So your light markers, at first they're used for putting down ink, but then they become kind of blenders. If I add this marker over here, it doesn't really change the color, but it does blend everything and it keeps the paper wet. So your lightest marker kind of becomes a blender as you progress into darker colors. I'm going to come back into number 3 right here. You know, like I said, that's a big jump. So I'll just get that wet. And then I'm going to come in with number 2. And we're just going to try to blur this again. Try to work out that line. Whenever you add a new color and you end, there's kind of a line. And then we'll come back in with that first color. And kind of blend 1 into 2. Alright, same thing. Let's go to number 4. I'm going to start in the darkest area because I'm adding a darker color. And I'm going to work my way about halfway through 4. Now, the paper that you use is really important. I am using paper that is 60 pound weight. So your regular printer paper is 20 pound. But in my opinion, it's just slightly too thin. The paper saturates pretty quickly, and so it gets a little bit harder to kind of mix if you can't really saturate the paper So you just have to work a little bit quicker with a thinner paper. It's totally fine. Some people prefer that. I prefer a slightly thicker paper. Yes, it uses a little bit more ink, but I think it's a little bit more forgiving. And it's just with more ink on the paper, it takes a little bit longer to dry. So you can actually kind of take your time a little bit more if you use a thicker paper. If you use a thinner paper, you have to work a little bit quicker. Now I'm using the brush tip. I pretty much 90% of the time I use the brush tip. The brush tip is really good for applying ink and mixing colors together. So I'm coming with the darkest color, go to the darkest area, and I'll go about halfway up through that 5 box. Now the brush tip I think is the best for just blending, but there's also a chisel tip on the back. And the chisel tip is a harder tip, and it can kind of digs into the paper. It kind of pushes down into the paper. And you can actually kind of go lighter with it. So you can always go darker. You can kind of go lighter a little bit. As long as the paper is wet, and you can use kind of your chisel tip. So what I'll do here is I'll use my chisel tip, and I'll kind of, this is number 2, this is my second marker, and I'll kind of just, I'm pushing pretty hard, and I'm kind of digging out that line. And you'll find that the ink around here will lighten up a fair bit. So it actually does behave a little bit differently. Like I said, I prefer the brush tip, and then the brush tip is actually just much safer too. Like the chisel tip can go through the paper, especially if it's pretty wet, and coming back with 1. Okay, so we can do this one more time, get the best fade we possibly can. So let's come 5, 4, 3. So using my lighter markers to blend together the darker markers. 2. Try to work out that line between the 2 and the 3. Just keep going over and blending it and blending it. That paper is nice and wet. Let's take a look at the other side of the paper. You can see how it's gone all the way through. Good indication that it's nice and wet. And then I'll come back in with that first color. So I think that's a pretty good fade for these 5 markers. Now a couple key things to note is that the lightest color that we have, you're not going to see. It's going to get blended in with the second color, the third color a little bit. So the lightest color is usually going to be closer to the second one. It'll be usually between halfway through between the first and the second color. And I think that's kind of what we have going on here. On the other hand, with the darkest marker, I'm never going to get quite that dark. Because I'm adding the dark ink to a wet ink that's a little bit lighter, that's already there, it's going to mix in with that wet ink, and it's not going to be quite as dark. So this is slightly lighter than it is up here. So you kind of got your min and your max, but it's like a greater than sign versus a greater than or equal to sign. All right, let's go ahead and let's color in this, I don't know, vegetable bean shaped thing. So same thing, we're gonna follow this rule of going the lightest, then the second lightest, back to the lightest. So we'll go 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm gonna come in with my lightest marker. So with the first marker, I can go to the lightest spot. Now I'm right-handed, so I typically have my sun spot or my light source in the upper right-hand corner. And I'm just going to kind of work this in a circular motion. I'll add a little bit more ink where I think it's really going to be bright, and then I'm just going to kind of fade it away into where it's actually going to end up being a little bit darker. So saturated here, saturated where the light is going to hit. This marker is actually kind of running out of ink, which is not good for me. Shoot. Yeah, I tend to go, the one problem with this technique is that you tend to use the lighter markers a little bit quicker because you're kind of using it as a blender. So you're constantly going, you're going 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. So for each step, I'm using the lightest marker. But I'm not using the darkest marker until the later steps. So you tend to run out of ink with the lighter marker a little bit sooner. Okay, so I'm going to come to the second color. Now, anytime we add a new color, we want to go darker, and we want to add it to the darkest spot of the drawing. So I'm going to say the darkest spot is going to be right down here. This color right here is going to change a lot. It's going to become much darker over here, but we're building up to it. We're not just going straight for the Hail Mary. We're kind of taking steps into it, and as we're doing that, we're blending all the colors together, and we're getting the paper slightly more and more damp. Okay? So come around, just kind of work into that area that we just colored, and then just kind of get everything else with this color. Now I don't need to go all the way down here. In fact, I don't think I will. But like I said, you want to step it up to about 2 colors more. So I want to go further than I need to go because I want to mix in with that next color on the paper. So this is good. And we're going to be coming back to these markers quite a bit. So we just did 2. Now we go 2, 1. So blend in the lightest color with the with that marker that we just put down a second ago. Coming back to my light area, hey in the light area, and just kind of working it that way. All right, let's go to the third color now. Again, a darker color, so I'm adding it to the darkest spot. Okay. And I'm just adding a little bits at a time. So it's a darker ink, but it's going in, the paper is slightly wetter than it was before. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing the inks on the paper itself, and it comes out really nicely. But it's important that you carry the lighter colors into the darker colors because they will have a small impact on it, and it just kind of helps the whole blend. So let's go to the darkest area. Since we got the third marker, we want to go up 2, so the up 2 is to the darkest spot, and let's just color this all in, and we'll try to get a little bit of a fade here going. So work in here. All right, let's go to the second color. Okay, so we went to the second color. We kind of work our way from the dark areas into the light areas, into the highlights, okay? So I transition that over here pretty well. I can always come back, I can always go over a darker area with my lighter marker. Like, there's really no harm in doing that. It's a good way to keep the paper wet. Just kind of blend everything together, keep it all together. Now you want to be careful about how wet you get the paper. Now, if I'm working in a large area, let's come to the lightest color, like really large area, like a sky or something like that, with a lot of clouds, and it takes a little while to go around all the clouds. The ink is, by the time I finish one end of the sky, I start at one end and finish at the other. By the time I finish, that first layer of ink at the very beginning is probably dry. Now, if I'm doing a face that's kind of small, chances are I'm going to go over it with multiple skin colors, and I can go over it fairly quickly. I'm going to saturate that paper. So I want to be careful that I'm not getting the paper too wet. I want it damp. That helps me mix it, but I don't want it so wet that it's going to start to bleed and damage the paper and whatnot. So if you find yourself working on a smaller area, pace yourself. Slow down, take a step away if you need to. Let the ink dry a little bit. Don't let it dry all the way. Let it dry a little bit if it starts to bleed on you. Okay, coming with that fourth marker, let's go to the darkest areas. So we'll say down at the bottom here. Gonna work our way up. Okay, here. And that's pretty good. Add a little bit of a shadow around the edge here, just a tiny, tiny bit. We're gonna end up fading a lot of that away. But I just want a touch of it. Now my paper is very wet right now. It's actually kind of starting to warp on me a little bit, which can be a little troublesome. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna keep going. If I were doing a paper, if I were doing like an actual drawing, I might slow down a little bit, take a step away, kind of, or maybe work on a different area. So I'll come to the third marker now and try to blend this. You're gradually just going to get a little bit darker and darker as you go. So we always just kind of start light and we gradually step it into the darker colors. And with each step, we're kind of mixing in a new color. and we're bringing all the colors together. So that allows you to really, it increases your range of blending capabilities. Coming in with the second marker, trying to blend back to the fourth one, so I like to go up 2. So blend back to the fourth marker a little bit. And then finally, let's come back in with number 1. So we'll just hit the highlight area. You can kind of go lighter. So since the ink is kind of wet, I can mix in this lighter highlighter color, and it will actually make the paper make the ink a little bit lighter. Not too much. Like, you can always go darker quite a bit. You can usually go lighter just a little bit, but the paper has to be wet. That's kind of the key thing here. All right, let's come in with the last color now. All right. So typically with the last color, you do kind of like a thin shadow. I'm not gonna break this thing all the way up. I'm gonna the paper's nice and wet, so this is kind of mixing in, and then I'm just gonna try to blend it up. Okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, the paper's wet, so we can make some mistakes and we can kind of come back and correct them. When I do this, I don't want to do like a line like that. I kind of want to just lightly do maybe like some little swirls while I'm doing a line, instead of doing a line. So we'll come here. Now we'll mix in number 4. Try to work out that line a little bit. I might have to do 2 passes. That's just fine. So I'm going to just try to work out that line with number 4. Kind of concentrating. I'm sticking pretty close to number 4 right now, to number 5 right now. Number 4, number 5, that border between the two. This is definitely going to require a second pass. And I think that's just because the colors are just so different. So I can kind of come a little bit lighter by adding more and more ink. So let's do another quick pass with the with number 5. And let's see if I can fade this a little bit more. So with this pass, I'm going to really hug the edge a lot, but I'm going to kind of saturate it. And that's really going to get the edge a lot darker. And then I'm going to, since I'm kind of saturating it, I'll be able to pull that ink into the lighter areas with my lighter marker. All right, so let's come back to number 4, and let's just kind of start ink in the darkest spot and kind of pull it towards the lighter areas. Okay. And I can just kind of do some circle motions, make sure I'm mixing it all together. Pretty good. All right, let's come to the third marker now. Again, with a lighter marker, we can still use this as a blender for the darker colors. So I'm still kind of going over the gap between 4 and 5, even though I'm using marker number 3. Come over this. See if I can blend this up a little bit. I can either try to lighten the color here, or I can try to kind of pull that dark color into the lighter areas. Kind of a combination of both. Come to my second color. Again, I can kind of blend everything with it. And then finally, let's go back to number 1. And then, you know what? I think I kind of want this, like right here is a little bit too dark. So what I can do is actually use my lightest marker. Since it's nice and wet, and I'm just going to go over it with the lightest marker. And it will actually lighten it up a fair bit. You'd be surprised. If that's not really working for me, I can always try to use the chisel tip, where you're kind of pushing the ink a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's nice. Let me see if I can increase this again, just a little bit. So something like that. I'm going to come in with number 4 again, see if I can blend out this line. I think this was a pretty big jump from number 4 to number 5. So you kind of, if you do a big jump, you really want that paper to be wet, and you're going to have to do several passes. But if I'm doing a small step from like 1 to 2, yeah, I can usually get by with like fairly dry paper and just doing like 1 pass. Alright, and then we'll come back in with this color. Just gotta blend it up. And one more pass with the lighter colors. Number 2. I'm kind of overkilling this. I'm doing this a little bit more than I need to. But I really just want to emphasize the point of going light, going 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. And then just kind of blend everything here together. So I think that about sums it up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any questions or if you need any clarification, I'll probably end up redoing this video based on your feedback, but I think this is a good start for my channel. Check out the channel while you're here. I basically am just going to be doing some different colorings with you. So for example, here's a heart with some skeletons. Here is Shrek. Here's Super Mario Galaxy. So if you watch my videos, we'll draw this together step by step. Kind of like Bob Ross, only with markers instead. Here's Mewtwo. I got Forest Link. Majora's Mask. And so on. Many, many more. Oh, this is my bottom paper. Yeah, I always recommend having a piece of paper underneath. As you can see, we bled through quite a bit. The paper is quite wet. It will actually start to warp on you a little bit, so just be careful with how much you're applying, especially if you're working in a smaller area. If you're working in a larger area, like a big sky, like I said, you don't have to worry so much about oversaturating the paper. You actually have to worry about the ink drying up on you. So there's a happy medium between how dry it is and how wet it is. So hope you found that helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the other videos.